Welcome to She Sells Radio, my friend. This topic today, I think, is something we can all benefit from because is it not so true that whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're in sales, it is your job in some way, shape, or form to promote yourself and to hype yourself up. And yet, is it not so common that one of our biggest fears, one of our biggest concerns is so often the fear of visibility and the fear of, not wanting to be too self-promotional or not wanting to stand out from the crowd. And, here's the thing, I get it. I get it. If you look, so much of this stuff is embedded in our subconscious mind. It really is. Whether or not you're a woman, over the course of history, people who have stood out too much, quote unquote, too much, I'm using air quotes here if you're listening, they get it in the end, right? Whether it's Abraham Lincoln, Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr., it's like there is subconscious programming in us that it is not safe to stand out and that it's much safer to stay back in the crowd. And then if you're a woman, there's even additional programming. If you think about, women being burned at the stake for years for standing out or for speaking their truth. It's like these things are ingrained in our conditioning, but it's not going to help you get to where you want to go to listen to that limiting belief. And I was inspired to talk about this based on, if you haven't listened yet, oh my gosh, go back and listen to episode 158, where I had Glenn Lundy on the podcast. He's the host of the super, super popular Clubhouse group Breakfast of Champions and has built just one of the biggest brands in the world today in the automotive space. And one of my biggest questions for him when I had him on was about how do you confidently market and promote yourself, because he very generously and very openly shared some of his personal background and challenges that he went through before he became the Glenn that people know him as today, and sharing things like being homeless, being suicidal. And we all have, regardless of what it is, we all have something in our past that it's like people would look back and be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you struggled with that, or I can't believe that that was part of your story. And so Glenn's no different than any of us. And I was grateful that he shared that part of his story. But I was curious, having gone from that background and having gone from the mindset of, he shared that he felt like he just didn't matter at all to anyone. And he wanted to just, eliminate his life so that he wouldn't be a burden on people anymore, to now being, I think, a phenomenal marketer. When I say marketer, I don't mean the disingenuous, hype yourself up when you don't really have anything to offer. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about people like you, like me, like Glenn, where it's like we have a great product or service to offer. We're heartfelt. We care a lot about the success of our clients. Oftentimes, we're the ones who struggle the most with marketing and promoting ourselves, right? So I was like, how did you do it? How do you do this with such confidence and so consistently when there was a time where you didn't think you mattered? And what he said was, it's a discipline. It takes discipline to market and promote yourself. And I thought, gosh, it's so true. To me, it was almost a relief to hear from him, like, it's not that it ever gets easy necessarily. I mean, maybe it does. I think I'm a million miles from where I first started with it, but I know sometimes I still have to push up on the edge of, ooh, Elise, are you being too self-promotional? Are you pushing your stuff too much? Right? Those things still stand out. Or when I throw my name in the hat for a big speaking engagement or for a big opportunity, I feel like I don't struggle with the imposter syndrome that to the extent that I hear a lot of people do, but I have it pop up to certain levels. Sometimes it depends on what it is. And I was like, okay, it is really reassuring to hear that even for someone who, has a big marketing machine and is doing all the things and pumping out content and doing a great job on it, that it still takes discipline, mental discipline to do that and to keep pushing and promoting and marketing yourself. So with all of that being said, I wanted to pop on today and share 3 tips that for me have made a big difference in marketing and promoting myself confidently and having discipline around that. And the first one is possibly my favorite. Actually, well, I like all three of them. I'll let you decide which one is your favorite, but it's to detach from yourself as what you're promoting. So it's a different energy when we're talking about and promoting ourselves, especially if, you're listening and you're an entrepreneur. And it's like, I work with a lot of entrepreneurs where it was really easy for them to sell something in corporate because they didn't have so much of their identity wrapped around it. But then when they started launching their own programs and products, and it's like they're the whole thing, at least at the beginning, that can bring up a lot of limiting beliefs. That can bring up a lot of self-doubt. It's a kind of a different game. So the key that I've found is to literally like mentally detach and forget that you're promoting yourself. Okay. And I want you to think about yourself or your service, whether you're promoting yourself as a personal brand, whether you're promoting a service you offer or something you sell through a company. Think about it as your favorite product, and you're in charge of marketing and promoting like the best thing on the planet. And I had a really, really powerful conversation. This was, probably years ago on the podcast. You can go back to the archives, scroll almost all the way to the beginning, to listen to the interview I did with Heather Monahan when she talked about this, and how for her, part of how she went from being fired to building a really successful brand in a relatively short amount of time was she put on her marketing hat and she started thinking of marketing herself as the products that she used to market and promote when she was, I think she was SVP of sales in a big radio company. And so she was like, all right, I'm going to market and promote myself like I did the products that I was in charge of marketing and promoting there. And it takes I'm not going to lie, it takes a swagger, right? It takes a certain amount of bravado to do that. But I think it can be really fun because you're going to step out of your box of how you normally think about yourself. And you're going to start to see yourself in these new ways, these different ways. And it's really, truly at its core, it's about getting out of fear and into service. I mean, that's it, because it doesn't do the world, it doesn't do your customers, it doesn't do anyone any good for you to hold back from sharing about how you can help. When I know by the very nature of you being a listener of this show that you have a great heart and you truly want to help people, and you have a great product or service, or if you're listening and you're like, I want to launch something, it's not fully launched yet, you will have a great product or service. And so remembering that it is a disservice to not put yourself out there and share how you can help people. And so we got to kind of put on that service hat and think about it. So think about, how would I promote and talk about my favorite thing in the world to other people? And then you kind of translate that energy into what you're doing for yourself. And if you need to kind of get the wheels oiled, is that the right word? You know what I'm saying? If you need to get the juice going here, make I'd say a couple things. One is having client testimonials that you read frequently. So keeping them, I've got a folder on my computer, and I also have clients who have they have paper files of them, they have them printed out, and they just read them on a regular basis to reinforce that belief and remind yourself of how valuable your service is, of the difference that you make in people's lives, reminding yourself of that. And I tell you what, you want to bring some powerful energy into the marketing and promoting you're about to do, remind yourself of the difference that you make in people's lives. And then two, this is one of my favorite confidence building hacks for anyone who's looking to grow their confidence and step into a new level of identity, is at the end of the day, write down 3 to 5 wins from the day, things you're proud of yourself for. It sounds so little, but I tell you what, it is a game changer. And you can go from being so down on yourself, being like focusing on the one thing that day that didn't go well, but then remembering, oh my gosh, but this happened. And then I did that. And then I did this. And look, even if the things didn't go exactly how you thought they were, you know what? The fact that you put yourself out there, the fact that you maybe took a risk, the fact that you took a chance, I want you to acknowledge yourself for that. And when you do that consistently, day in and day out, you will start to build an incredibly healthy self-image that you'll want to promote, like you'll want to talk to people about it. And it's not ego. This is the thing, that none of this is about coming from a place of ego. Ego is really insecurity disguised. So it's not that. This is, you feel so good. You feel so whole. You're so in love with yourself. You're so in love with life, and you just want to help. Like, that's it. That's it. It does take discipline, right? It does take discipline to still put ourselves out there and be like, look, here I am. What I do makes a huge difference. I want to serve you, but play with it with that energy, and it'll make a big difference. The second tip here to market and promote yourself with more discipline is be willing to get uncomfortable. Anytime something feels too comfortable, you can know that you're not growing. You can know that there's another edge that you could reach if you really did it. And I remember, for me, the first time I sang publicly on social media, and it wasn't like marketing or promoting myself as a singer, it was a challenge from my coach at the time to get out of my comfort zone. And some of, you may know my story, you may not, but for me, I was a singer growing up. I was a singer in high school and always loved singing, but I had stopped singing publicly after I'd been sexually assaulted. And I still loved to sing, but I'd kind of like let that part of myself die. And when my mentor challenged me to sing publicly on social media, and for me, it was like, I had invested enough money that I was like, I'm burning the ships. I'm doing whatever she tells me to do. I'm just going to do it. And I did it. And I put myself out there. I mean, it felt like an out of body experience. I was so uncomfortable. I was so nervous. I was shaking. I kind of blacked out, if I'm being honest. But for you, well, here's what else. I'll kind of put an end to that story, and then I'll share how that applies to you. It helped me step into a whole new level of identity of who I am. And it helped me stop being afraid of sharing my gifts, of sharing who I am, of sharing more parts of me that I had been hiding. And it was a really, really liberating experience, because it was kind of taking that thing that I had had a lot of shame around and a lot of regret around too, and a lot of what ifs around, like, what if I had pursued this? What if I had, leaned into this more? And I had given my power away in that area for a long time. But in that moment, I took it back, and I started seeing myself as a different person. I started seeing myself as more confident, as more worthy, as more dynamic, because I put something out there that made me feel really uncomfortable. And it wasn't the safe Instagram post. We all know those. They don't get a lot of engagement, but it's safe feeling, right? And it was like, okay, this really stretched my identity. And for you, maybe that's doing a live stream. Maybe that's committing. I've got a client right now who's doing a daily live stream for 21 days. And she's phenomenal. She's doing great with them. But I remember there was a time for me where I was so scared to do a live stream, and I was sweating and I was nervous. And I was like, what if I totally mess up and botch my words? But I did it anyway. And yes, I did sweat while I did it. And yes, it was probably a little awkward, but you know what? There's always a first. There's always a first. And anyone who's a master at anything now, they were probably really bad at what they did at the beginning, or they at least weren't great, right? So we all have to start somewhere with it. And I want you to practice like, ooh, where have I gotten a little too comfortable with what I'm putting out there or not putting out there? And where is it time for me to lean in and get even more uncomfortable? And I remember this was years ago, but this was inspiring to me. I listened to one of Jenna Kutcher's podcast episodes, and she talked about making the decision to run an experiment to have her face in every picture on her Instagram for, I think it was like a month, and how uncomfortable that made her at the beginning, because she was like, oh my gosh, this is so self-promotional. I look like I'm full of myself. But she talked about the insane difference in engagement, the insane difference in results, the insane difference in metrics when it was her face on the front of everything, not just pretty pictures. And so whatever that edge is for you, lean into it a little bit this week. I want you to practice that, practice leaning in, practice getting uncomfortable. And then the third tip here is with anything, as with anything where we're looking to grow or shift a habit or lean in and get uncomfortable, get some accountability, my friend. One of the best things I did for myself was get an accountability partner where I report to her every week on what I'm committing to do for the week, then what I actually did. And we go in, we go back and forth throughout the week on what's a limiting, like, do you have limiting beliefs popping up? Are you struggling in a certain area? And then of course, victories too. But get an accountability partner with this, whether it's one of your colleagues at work, whether it's one of your entrepreneur friends, I don't care who it is, but get an accountability partner and make a decision that for the next 30 days, you are going to practice leaning in, getting uncomfortable, and promoting yourself to a level that up until this point would have felt radically uncomfortable to you. And I want to know how it goes. I'm at Elise Archer on all social. Tag me, let me know, like, what are you going to do to get uncomfortable? What are you going to do to lean in and practice marketing and promoting yourself more? Because if you don't do it, how are your clients going to find you? Just throwing it out there. You're here, I'm sure, because you want to make more money. You want to make more sales. You want a greater lifestyle. You want to have more impact. You want to give more. That means we've got to elevate ourselves to a higher standard in all areas, including how we put ourselves out there. So, as always, my friend, thank you for tuning in to today's episode. And I just want to say, if you are a woman who's looking to break through six figures and start having 10K plus months, I want you to go check out elisearcher.com/10K club. That's elisearcher.com/10K club. The program, our 10K club program, is renewed, revamped, phenomenal. I'm just beyond excited about it. And there's so much good in there. And you can book a free call with me and my team from there. And then of course, head on over to elisearcher.com for all sorts of goodies and other trainings to help you elevate your sales and step into a greater level of financial abundance in your life, and then truly transform into the person who you know you were meant to be. And I hope you enjoyed this episode. And I want to encourage you to go listen to one of our other She Sells Radio episodes now for continued inspiration. I'll see you on our next